Yeah. So when I was 12, and this would have been in the year 2012, a lot of crazy things were going on in my life, or at least stuff that I considered to be crazy that I now realize is pretty normal. I think I would attribute this all to one day in Arabic class. We were engaging in the American cultural ritual of passing a stack of worksheets down the class. Every American who's been through the schooling system, whether it's a public or private school, is familiar with this ritual. It's called take one and pass it down. So I was engaging in this cultural ritual in Arabic class when I was 12, and in the process of exchanging worksheets, my hand briefly brushed by the hand of one of my female classmates. And suddenly I felt all of these really odd sensations in my body. My heart rate skyrocketed. It became harder to breathe. I became flushed. I became kind of dizzy. And when I looked at this classmate of mine and apologized to her, or at least wanted to apologize to her for the brief brush of our hands, I realized that no words came out. So I didn't know what to make of this experience. And I was a medical researcher, probably since the age of about 8, when I started reading parenting books and medical journals. Trans was not my first intellectual obsession. I would probably say my first intellectual obsession was with the world's tallest people, who I had discovered in the Guinness Book of World Records. And once I realized that they all had a brain tumor, a pituitary tumor, which caused them to experience asymmetric growth, and that this condition is called acromegaly, suddenly I took it upon my shoulders as an 8 and 9-year-old to solve this condition. And so that became the topic of my obsession for several years. And because of that obsession, I had already spent a lot of time reading medical journals online. Most of it went over my head because I was like 8 or 9 years old, but I was fascinated with this condition. So I developed a lot of research skills. And I didn't really know what to make of all of these odd sensations that I was feeling in my body. Um, so I, like the good medical researcher that I was, went into WebMD, typed in all of my symptoms, and WebMD generated me a list of 3 neurodegenerative conditions that would all kill me at some point, and a few types of cancer. So I was pretty distressed around these feelings. I absolutely had no clue what was going on. Meanwhile, my peer group in 7th grade was talking a lot about crushes. I didn't know what crushes were. I thought that Crush was the orange soda, and that my peer group was obsessed with it in the same way as they were obsessed with penny boards, silly bands, and Pokemon cards. So I thought that these crushes were just a trend that, after it waxed, it would wane and it would be replaced by another trend. I didn't realize that crushes were, that this was a slang term to refer to the budding romantic attraction that many kids start to feel around middle school. So I was pretty confused. But there were a few things that I did realize when I was dealing with all these feelings. And first and foremost, I realized that if I were to just hang around a group of guys, I wouldn't feel all of these, totally destabilizing feelings that were so uncomfortable that I thought that I was going to die from some rare disease. So I hung around an entirely male peer group, and we actually created an alliance. Myself and the boys in my class, we created an alliance through which we used to prank the teachers incessantly because we got laughs from the girls. And that's sort of what we were all going for, despite not explicitly discussing this. So I was hanging out with this male peer group, and because those were my peers, I wanted to emulate them. But even more than that, I wanted to emulate Ellen DeGeneres because I had seen her on TV. I thought she was very dapper, very well dressed, very charismatic, and I wanted to emulate her style. But I got the message pretty quickly that, from adults in my life that this type of behavior is unacceptable, that my desire to wear the clothes that my male peers were wearing and that Ellen DeGeneres was wearing, that this was totally unacceptable. And because I grew up in a progressive West Coast city, I had been exposed to the idea of sex changes. Although all of the people undergoing sex changes prior 2012, as I had perceived it in my mind, they were all men who wanted to become women. So I went on the internet and I wanted to know whether it was possible to do the same thing, but as a female becoming a male. So I typed that into Google and I got my answer. And that's the story of how I became trans identified at the age of 12 in the year 2012, far before my peer group had ever heard of the idea and latched onto it.